Guilty Gear Season 3 saw returning favorites exclusively as Season 3 characters. Beloved characters like Johnny, Elfelt, and Slayer were announced and the fans celebrated. Oh wait, what's that? They added a fourth character? Oh yeah, they added A.B.A. The A.B.A. announcement was actually a pretty surprising one, and reactions to her were all over the place. From people thinking the silhouette was actually Venom, who was announced later, to how the character was even perceived on release. A.B.A. is what we call a mode change character because she has two modes. She has normal mode, where she's not super mobile and she doesn't do too much damage, but she can transform into Jealousy Rage mode, where she's incredibly powerful with much higher damage potential. So what's the catch? Jealousy Rage is on a timer. 10% of the bar is about 1 second, and she starts with half the bar. She also has no way of passively gaining meter, which means she has to engage with the opponent directly in order to build this resource. You also have to hit with specific moves in order to build Jealousy Rage. Generally, anything that uses the key will help you build resource. She has a parry to also build resource, but it can be a little bit difficult to use because it doesn't activate on the first frame. So for the most part, you'll see people building resource by hitting people. On top of that, if for some reason she has less than 25% Jealousy Rage, she cannot enter the form at all. Now, these restrictions caused a lot of high-level players to declare her to be the worst character in the game on release. But after a couple of weeks, the tone kind of lightened on her as people developed the character. But once Slayer was announced, people kind of forgot about A.B.A. because Slayer is also a high damage character who doesn't have these weird restrictions around when he can access his high damage. But there is somebody who didn't forget about her, and of course that's your boy.
Yes, sir.
So when new characters come out, I test them for at least a week to see kind of where I think they're gonna fit in the meta and learn some things about the character and maybe figure out some early counterplay. But after playing A.B.A. for a week, I played her for a second week, and then I played her for a third week, and I'm still playing her. Now, at the time of A.B.A.'s release, I'm still maining Baiken exclusively, but with almost 2 years of experience with the character, and really trying to push her to her limit, I was starting to feel a lot of pressure because a lot of the characters have been improved a lot and Baiken's kind of been left behind. If you want details about that, after EVO I made a video about all the little problems Baiken has. Now the thing is, I think Baiken plays an important part in this game, and there's some pretty important things with the characters, but she has some pretty annoying, to say the least, matchups, so I was really looking for a character to fill in these gaps, and that started to be another thing I was kind of looking for in DLC characters. Even trying Ramifal Valentine for a little while and doing another stint with Testament. But after playing A.B.A. for around a month, I started to think she complemented Baiken in a pretty good way. You see, the main problem high-level players have with A.B.A. is that normal mode is weak and many characters can run circles around her. However, all the characters in the game are different, and Guilty Gear does encourage all characters to approach at some point. Even the Zoner is a rushdown character in Guilty Gear, right? So while some characters slam backdash and set up their offense from a safe position, which is one of the main detriments that A.B.A. has and why people were saying she was weak very early, other characters kind of have to play mid-range, and others still might have to run straight at you. And normal mode, while being seemingly weak, actually has some pretty unique advantages. For starters, her fastest button is her 2P, a crouching 4-frame move. You will spend a lot of time crouching in this mode, either dash blocking by holding down back, which is unique to her, or on defense. And unlike kicks, you can mash it. And most importantly, it pretty consistently leads into a knockdown. This knockdown, most importantly, gives you Jealousy Rage. Her frame data is also surprisingly good in this mode. So the first hit of her Rekka is -5, which is a pretty safe move, and there are many 5-frame moves that will not reach her when you space this correctly. Her 2-3k is -1, so a big thing about this is that it can't be throw punished, and you're out of range of throw for the most part anyway, and it crushes lows, and even certain mid pokes, which is pretty good considering the range. Finally, her key grab, which she uses to transform on hit, is also a +2 guard crush on block, meaning she could build significant Jealousy Rage meter on block, along with having a strike throw situation with no throw protection. And then finally, the thing that people thought was the weakest thing about her is also actually pretty decent, which is her neutral. Both of her kicks are massive and very active, and they combo into Rekka for max range. Kicks specifically are pretty important because they're very fast, they're pretty hard to lift punish, and compared to other moves like 5H that have a ton of recovery, these basically have none and are very easy to use. She can also alter her air momentum in pretty interesting ways. So 6Ps can be pretty difficult for her to deal with because she kind of moves slowly in the air, but using JD, you can mess with the opponent's timing and also get a knockdown. And while 5H on whiff is pretty terrible, to be fair, it has massive range and pushback. And in some cases, even if this is negative on block, it can be hard for our opponent to get all the way over here, thanks to how much pushback this move has. It's also pretty easy to convert off of. So I started thinking about what matchups would she be really effective in. Because again, the main complaint about her was that she was too unstable. Some characters were really good at running away and could stop her from setting up. But that means there had to be some characters that were not as good at stopping her from setting up, right? So the place I started with was Baiken's worst matchups outside of advantageous zoners are characters where she can't punish them effectively. So for example, with Anji, you have this simple block string where he goes into the low, and the low is punishable. That being said, either she's not close enough, or in the case that he is close enough for some reason, unless you instant block this Nagiha, you're not going to be able to get a meaningful punish. Most of the time, the best thing you can get is maybe this Yozan-sen to connect, and again, you have to be pretty close to do that. Things like Sweet Whiff and 6K don't work either. Also, you're punishing and not getting a counter hit, so you can't use Tatami to convert either. Keep in mind that if you get hit by this low, he gets a massive combo and will break the wall on you. So even though it's not safe, he's not really discouraged from using it even when you block it. Not to mention that he can change the timing on when he does these things. So in the case of A.B.A, she can punish this into a hard knockdown in basically all cases outside of absolute max range. So even though he gets a big combo off it, he's more discouraged to use it because I could enter jealousy rage immediately after this knockdown. So after playing A.B.A for some time and trying her against many characters, I made a short list of characters that I was pretty sure A.B.A should have an advantage against that I did not like fighting with Baiken. So the aforementioned Anji, Chip, Xanath, actually Baiken, Faust, and the odd one out in this group, Milia. And after about 6 weeks of playing her, I was pretty certain I wanted to try her in tournaments in these matchups. Each one of these characters I listed have aspects of either there's something about A.B.A's play where she gets to stay in jealousy rage very often, or she's able to reverse situations into a winning condition. So for example, there's Chip Xanath. So at a glance, you might be like, how can A.B.A even think of catching Chip? But his far slash is not disjointed. Both her 5k and her 2k are pretty effective against this move, especially 2k. So they're forced to either play more patiently or use really big buttons like 5H or 6H, which means that's more time of Chip not moving quickly. On defense, when she blocks Rekka 2 specifically, she could punish into a hard knockdown. And if you're really sick nasty with it, since she has a 4-frame normal, you can also punish his Rekka 1. She can also punish Gamma Blade sometimes too, but this is kind of rage dependent. And finally, his low HP means that he dies very quickly in jealousy rage. So once you actually pin him down, you can kill him quickly. So with all that, I decided to start playing her in tournament. And if you follow me on like Twitter, you probably have heard that I'm pretty happy of using this character in tournament and the matches I've been playing her with, but it all wasn't smiles and roses at the beginning. So for starters, we have UMAD. So this is one of the early tournaments of me playing her, and that's actually recorded. So this is actually before I really figured out the Anji matchup. I did know I wanted to play her against Anji. So a big problem that you're gonna have when you're learning A.B.A vs Anji is how to fight Spin, of course, because they buffed Spin in Season 3 by giving him his new special move. The thing I had to understand was how much stuff Anji does that's kind of unsafe, and this is a matchup that's really about winning on defense. I don't think she like wins really hard against him. I think it's like a slight advantage at best. But even having a slight advantage against this version of Anji is pretty important because he has a lot of HP, he gets meter very easily, he's just really tanky, has really high reward. Like, it can be pretty obnoxious to fight him, and she has the HP kind of to fight back. There's also some problems about how I kind of structured things at this time, but overall, by the time I'm playing her in tournament, I'm pretty comfortable with how I play the character. Anji is a test in patience, especially, so if you're not really well built against him, it could be pretty difficult, and I wasn't really practicing the defense against him and making sure I chose to dash block and having my strategies ready. Being too aggressive caused me to lose this set, but it was a very important set because it reminded me Anji is like one of the characters that has like some of the most upsets in this game. In the second round, I just try to remember that my opponent's kind of being kind of forceful, and Anji is kind of a character that enforces people to try to take risks. He tried to like hides behind the risks, let's say. I try to pull up, but at this range, I am mildly struggling, not really reacting to butterfly well, and not really taking my turn back in an efficient way because I'm not practiced against his various cancels at this point. Trying to use the YRC to get a little bit of meter, and he mashes on my plus frames. Trying to slide in, but this is basically the worst situation you could be with the character. With a big combo here, a wall break seals his win. Now, I'm rightfully pretty mad about this, but I do know that A.B.A should be able to do well against this character. So this tournament was really important to me because I used A.B.A quite a bit in it as well, and it showed still where my cracks were with the character. I ended up practicing against this player and another Anji player the entire weekend in order to really tighten up my Anji strategy. I had won the previous large event in Canada, so this time I wanted to make sure that A.B.A would do her job to support Baiken. Starting from that event, when I went home, A.B.A became a sniper for me. So my main problem in the Baiken mirror is that since she can't convert very well, if another Baiken is willing to take more risks, they end up out-converting me by quite a bit, because she has very safe and stable options against herself, but they don't lead it to return. So with my knowledge of the character from developing her for the past couple of years, I can do many of the things with A.B.A that lead into big combos. Not only that, I mostly thought that I played neutral better, but again, since I was using mostly safe options, I wasn't getting combos, where A.B.A would get a combo. And now I'm faster, I have better normals, I have 50/50s, I have projectile Oki if I want, I have projectiles in pressure if I want, I have all these advantages. The other nice thing is I have plenty of time to see how a Baiken player plays and how many risks they're willing to take. The more you learn about Baiken, the more you'll realize like different people are comfortable with different amounts of risk, and most of the reason why people don't like fighting Baiken in this game is that Baiken players are just not really risk averse, to put it lightly. So this player in particular, even though some of the things in this set look pretty funny, I'm pretty chill the whole time, and I have the HP pool to just be like, okay, are you really going to do this? Are you really going to take this again over and over? Because the risk return is just not really in Baiken's favor most of the time. After an immediate burst, I'm able to pull up from full screen and just get a mix up and close the round despite all the gambles they took. A particularly funny round was this game 4, round 2, where things like running full screen at A.B.A here, or I transform. Now I have some control, air versus air into a quick little wall break, so I'm feeling pretty good. This is kind of old combo routing for my A.B.A sweat, so don't worry about it. Now, after this wall break, I feel pretty comfortable, and I think I'm going to win 3-1. And they're whiffing parries. This is a really good example of the risk return is not in their favor, but they're still kind of just doing it, so I'm just shrugging this whole time. And not only are they not paying attention to my meter, so they use parry in the slowdown. Because here I'm forced to exit, right? They slam parry again with no meter. So depending on who you are, you might be like, man, these are some godlike reads. From my perspective, I'm like, this person is gambling like crazy and I don't really care that much. Not only that, I have an extra game on them as well. So even in this situation, I feel pretty comfortable, even though it's like a last game situation. I'm just like, I'm going to just out risk return you overall if you keep playing like this. Where in the Baiken mirror, it would actually be reasonably difficult outside the fact that like Baiken uses left rights. And I didn't think the player had the defensive technique, but you don't want to really rely on people not having stuff, where again with A.B.A I can out risk return. After this wall break, I'm going to specifically wait to get 50 meter so that I could attack safely using tentacle once I have an opportunity. Even with this parry, I say whatever, you got it boss, over and over, transform back, get the meter, see them whiff, and card cancel into super. The closing sequence is pretty similar, so even though the wall is broken, I'm about to run out of jealousy rage, I have plenty of meter to work with. I could just kind of stand and watch them kind of flail until I have an opportunity to kind of just sneak something in, get jealousy rage, do the projectile super to protect myself from parrying, small little check. Because of this, they lose the meter. Not using S Kabari means I can kind of just slide out, see the H Kabari on my air dash, get a punish. Here, I was still a little bit slow. Today's LK would do the Jealousy Rage Super and just win. Taking the plus guard crush into overhead kick where they use their meter to do a blind parry. So this type of risk return that I'm talking about, where I don't need to know in advance as much because I generally have numbers in my favor and I can make a lot of mistakes because of her health. And then finally, Evo. So at Evo, I played 7 sets and used A.B.A 5 times. And this is the main one where I played on stage against Pop, who also plays Baiken. So kind of a similar strategy, except I'm far more refined at this point because I've just had more time. This set is 3 additional weeks after CEO, and it's a pretty similar strategy. Just go into Jealousy Rage, try to force risk return numbers, see what they like to do, how they like to preempt with things, and then try to counter. I'll need to hit Baiken a couple of times, even though Baiken's HP is not super bad, like it's above 500. A.B.A does do a lot of damage, and I can take plenty of hits. On top of that, since I play Baiken, I know a lot of Baiken's little gaps and a lot of counters to things that Baiken players like to do. Getting burst in the corner is kind of rough here, and exiting here, this is basically the worst situation, but since I was able to go back into Jealousy Rage right away, I'm able to continue my offense, but I do not have meter right now, so this is low-key struggling. Unfortunately, a poorly placed Yozan-san gives me a chance to do Jealousy Rage. The parry should lead into the side swap here, but she decides to keep the wall and use Tether instead. Now that I'm exited, a poor mash kills me, but I'm kind of comfortable. In round number 3, I decide to try to approach early. Since Baiken doesn't have a burst here, I'm slightly incentivized to transform in neutral, which I do. This was a while ago, so I was using more 2S slide, which side swaps you. So instead, what you want to do is 2S and then just react to whether or not they get hit or not. I use the meter to keep my advantage, so I almost have 50 meter. Waiting to fight parry a little bit, getting a low, and transforming. I'm out of Jealousy Rage right now, but I still have burst, so I still have ways of getting resource. This is quite some damage into a small knockdown, into throw, which is actually threatening. That mix-up, unfortunately, is unseeable. She spent some resource, and I try to keep the corner. Pretty spooky situation being boxed in the corner with no resource. This is, you straight up have to outplay your opponent here. But a well-played 6P closes the round. In the final round of this set, again, I use a kind of similar strategy of just using numbers against Baiken, but unlike my previous Baiken opponent, she's able to space really well and react to jumps. So I find myself without resource a decent amount, more than I would like. Getting bursted seems tough, but now that I have 50 meter, I can force gaining resource by slowly advancing towards Baiken. Using 2-3k counter hits, I spend my resource to break the wall, but I forgot to transform before using Wild Assault, and we make it work somehow. After transforming, I get knocked down. This doesn't put me in a super good position, but I chase anyway, and with the resource, I close the game. So as a solo character, A.B.A can be pretty difficult to succeed with, but supporting another character, she is really, really good. It's a very specific niche that's pretty uncommon in this game, and kind of reminds me of like how I think about Axel, where Axel is really, really, really good in his winning matchups, and really, really struggling in his losing matchups. I do really enjoy the character, and it's kind of funny how it's full circle because that's the character I played in Guilty Gear Slash with my high school friends. So I'm glad I'm able to play the character again. But let me know what you guys think. As usual, if you have any questions or comments, definitely feel free to leave them in the comment section below. If you're looking for any Guilty Gear coaching, I do coaching on Metafy at metafy.gg/@LordKnight. By the time this video comes out, I'm probably back, so I will be streaming basically every day at twitch.tv/LordKnight. Like and subscribe if you guys feel like it, and I'll see y'all next time. Peace out.